Ruth, I can't believe we're having this conversation right now, considering that just a few weeks ago, we were all glued to our TVs, to social media, watching everything happening between Israel and Iran.
First of all, I can't breathe. I mean, look at this. This is amazing. Thank you so much for coming to listen. Wow.
In recent weeks, we've seen decisive strikes on Iranian nuclear infrastructure and a deepening of U.S.-Israel coordination. From your perspective, how would you describe the current strategic reality in the region? Where are we compared to pre-October 7, post-October 7, and now?
Okay, that's a very small question to begin with, right? So, let me try and put things in perspective from my point of view. I think that we all focused on the Israel-Palestine, the Muslim-Jewish, the Arab-Israeli conflict all the time. But I want to suggest something a little bit different. If we take the globe and we look at what is really going on, I would suggest that it's all about the war between the Shiite Muslim extremists and the Sunni Muslim extremists. So inside that fight, we are also in there, and we have a diamond that they all want to create a global caliphate, an extreme global caliphate based on Sharia law. One wants a Shiite Sharia law, the other wants a Sunni Sharia law. But what do we have that's so incredibly attractive? Jerusalem. So we are in this, you're also in this. America, Europe, Canada, Australia. And that's what they're fighting for, to create that global caliphate, while actually we need to understand that the focus is they're against one another. We are in the midst of that fight. If we understand that perspective, we can better analyze October 7, the aftermath of October 7, the Iranian Israeli war that took 12 days, and so on.
Following the escalation and then the de-escalation, following reported strikes on sites like Fordow, what does the region look like if Iran's nuclear ambitions are truly set back? How might this shift their proxy behavior, the way they operate in the region? Does it eliminate threats? Does it present opportunities? What do you think we should be preparing for?
Okay, so before I say anything else, it's already been shown on the media that Iran just closed its airspace. So get ready. But to say the truth, there was a significant hit on the capabilities of Iran, on the rocket launching or the ballistic missile launching capability, the launching and the missiles themselves, which was a huge threat to Israel, just even without the enriched uranium and the nuclear issue. Second of all, the nuclear issue. Both of those were set back. Were they completely annihilated? No. So we're not done. The third thing was the proxies. They were feeding those proxies, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and so on and so forth. They were feeding them, and we needed to stop that feeding in terms of financial aid, in terms of training, in terms of incitement. And we managed to do that to a significant point. Hamas has been weakened, Hezbollah significantly weakened, and so on. The Houthis, they're still throwing, launching a missile every 5 seconds approximately, but still there is a weakening of the proxies. Have we annihilated that capability completely? No. So are we finished with the, let's say, Shiite access? No. Has it been weakened significantly? Yes. But let me remind everybody something that's very, very important. and perhaps it's less on the radar screen. And that's when the Shiite extreme axis goes down, the Sunni extreme axis goes up. Think about what happened when the US hit ISIS very, very hard with an international coalition in Iraq and elsewhere. The Shiite axis went up. So we need to understand, and that's what I said in the beginning, the fight between the Shiite extremist Islamists and the Sunni extremist Islamists, that's the backdrop of everything. And within that, we can analyze what's going on. So now the Shiite axis is weakened. We need to watch out for Qatar. We need to watch out for Turkey. We need to watch out also for the Shiite axis that's been weakened, and now it's like a wounded animal. And I always say that a wounded animal can be very, very, very dangerous.
You mentioned the US, and we can't talk about the escalations between Israel and Iran without talking about the US and their involvement. With President Trump back in office, what does the relationship look like now when it comes to coordination, navigating threats in the region? What does that coordination look like between Israel and the States? Is there greater collaboration? Are there tensions? What's your perspective?
So first I'll say that there's no relationship without tension. It doesn't exist, it's not...
My husband would say the same.
Of course. I didn't speak to him before. But of course, I mean, it goes without saying there's no such thing. Having said that, I think that the coordination and the cooperation was far beyond what was seen in the media and overtly. I think that the coordination was very, very deep behind the scenes, and there was, in my humble opinion, and Trump didn't tell me this personally, yes, nor did Bibi, but I feel that there was the coordination and the setup before there was a decision so-called made media-wise in terms of the involvement of the US in the bombing of Fordo. So I feel that the coordination and the vision is there. I feel that it's still there vis-a-vis potential continuation, both in the Iranian arena as well as the Gazan arena. And I'll stop there.
When talking about what's happening in the region, as you said, every headline, every conversation is revolving around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, most recently the Israel-Iran conflict. But what does the rest of the region look like? Even amid war, some of Israel's Arab partners have continued quiet coordination. Are these ties strengthening? Are they unraveling? Are they evolving? What's your assessment of the durability of the Abraham Accords and their potential expansion?
Okay, that's a really small question. I'm going to try and somehow answer everything. But I'll give you a taste. Worst comes to worst. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them after. So basically, there has been a low-key, behind-the-scenes cooperation and coordination with Gulf countries for certain, because of course they see the Shiite axis as something which is horrific, as I said. It's first and foremost, and I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a clock gone wrong, but this is the thing, that if you come out of this room remembering, I've done my job, it's all about the Shiite and the Sunni war. And in between is everything else. And what are they warring about? To create an Islamic caliphate. I'm talking about the extremist Islamists, not all of them. An Islamic caliphate based on Sharia, depending on which Sharia, Shiite or Sunni. Now, the Saudis see the Shiite threat as something quite horrific. I mean, the Iranians have been feeding the Houthis that have been attacking the Saudis and their oil refineries and so on for years. Likewise, the United Arab Emirates and so on. Did they come out and say that openly? No. But have you ever visited the Arab League? Everything is said in between the lines. It's all brotherly love and friendship and rosy, happy, fraternity and so on. Between the lines, there's a lot of tension. And Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, when Israel attacked Iran, condemned the attack. And that's it. One country not only condemned the attack, but actually went further and stood beside Iran, which was a very strange thing to see. And that was the Republic of Egypt. Now, Egypt, an almost entirely Sunni country, was traditionally an enemy of Iran. I mean, the Shah of Iran, the worst enemy of the Ayatollahs, is buried in a beautiful place in the center of Cairo. You have one of the main streets of Tehran was named after the assassin of Sadat, former president of Egypt. There were endless espionage issues between Iran and Egypt. There were enemies. So what happened? In the past year and a half, we saw very high-level visits, Iranian visits in Cairo, with very high-ranking personalities in the Egyptian administration. Very close-knit relationship, and that's very odd and interesting to follow. What did the Iranians promise the Egyptians that made them shift? And shift they did. Because they were the only country that went out of its way to say, we stand beside Iran, not only condemning Israel about the attack. And that's very, very interesting. In general, what's happening in Egypt following October 7th is very, very interesting. Because it seems as if they had made a pact with the devil itself, and that's Hamas. Why would Egypt, which perceives Hamas as its enemy, part of the Muslim Brotherhood, seeking to undermine the Egyptian government, why on earth would they make a pact with Hamas? In order for Hamas not to join hands with like-minded organizations in the Sinai Peninsula, like localized ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, like a certain branch of Hamas in Sinai. And if it's on expense of Israel, yeah, on expense of Israel. And this is something that requires perhaps a deeper understanding. Not because they will war with Israel tomorrow morning, no. But it needs to be comprehended that a price that Israel has paid is somehow connected to this pact that was made clandestinely by Egypt with Hamas. Do they still seek stability? Yes. Do they fear the infiltration of Hamas into their territory? Yes. Did they choose the right path to prevent it? In my humble opinion, no. But they didn't consult me before they did that. Jordan. I have to say a word about Jordan. So you know, Israel has 336-kilometer border with Jordan. That's a long border. Do you know what's on that border? Nothing. Nothing. Not a table, not a chair, not a fence, not a wall, nothing. There is a little fence 50 kilometers out of the 336, but that's it. And you know, Jordan is a little country with a Hashemite kingdom, which is supported by Israel for water, supported by the United States in terms of weapons and militarily. Iran, or rather, the Ayatollah Iran, the Iranian regime, was trying to undermine the Hashemite kingdom for years, trying to strengthen Hamas within Jordan as well. Surprisingly finding Shiite graves in Jordan all of a sudden. They happened, by complete coincidence, to be very close to the Jordanian Israeli border. And they had to tend to these particular graves, tombs. And what happened after October 7th? If you remember correctly, the Iranians asked the Jordanians, after trying to instigate and incite the local Palestinians against the Hashemite kingdom for years, you want to help? We'll send our militias from Iraq, your neighbor, to help you. And the Jordanians, for the first time, took a stand, a declarative, public stand. And they said no. That didn't make them nicer to Israel publicly or declaratively. They still said what they had said for years against the Israeli government, against Israeli policy, against everything that Israel does. But for the first time, they went out publicly against Iran or the Iranian regime. And that's something interesting to watch as well. Syria. Obviously, after we had given the Hezbollah a very strong hit, the diamond in the proxy basket of the Iranian regime, there was a chance for those who took over Syria to do so. Now, who was behind that? Anyone? Feel free. I can't hear you. Al-Julani, you want to say? Al-Qaeda? Well, he and Al-Qaeda are sort of an offshoot of one another. But I would even argue that no. The one behind this is Erdogan, the president of Turkey. And when I'm asked whether I think that Al-Julani is suddenly in love with suits more than terrorism, I always answer that it doesn't really matter. Because what really matters is that it's no longer just Syria. It's all of a sudden Turkey on our border. And that's how we need to look at it from now on. So we're having a very interesting shift. You say, are there shifts? Is there movement? Is there potential vis-a-vis the Abraham Accords? Are there challenges and threats? Everything is correct. Everything has moved. Everything has shifted. There are threats and there are opportunities, but we need to be on our tiptoes.
Incredible. Everything you just touched on, you offered such a layered and nuanced understanding of what we're looking at. And I know I can speak for all of us when I say that we wish the conversations that were happening on college campuses around these issues with students who seem so heartfelt about what's happening in the region that they could explore these issues with that same level of nuance and sensitivity. If that were the case, probably a lot of us would have different jobs than be in this room. So I have to ask you, given these shifting dynamics in the region and the wave of misinformation and disinformation that we are battling against on campuses, what can us professionals take back with us and to our students?
Wow, first of all, I salute all of you. I really mean it. I come from Israel. As you know, sleeping the last few months in Israel has not been great. But what you go through here is, it's unbelievable. And as somebody who grew up not in Israel, but in a Jewish community in South Africa, as you can hear, I salute you. I would stand up and salute, but I think I would make an idiot out of myself, so please forgive me. But I really do. I think that what you're doing is amazing. And the first thing that I would ask you, and who am I to give you this advice, but to go on and to be proud and to hold your head high. First of all, God is with us. Amen. Yes. Absolutely. And you know, we didn't take anything from anybody. We didn't do anything bad. We're just being. And we should be proud of who we are. I wear, yes. I wear the Magen David. I was born Jewish. I am Jewish. Be'ezrat Hashem, I will die Jewish. My children are Jewish. And that's just fine. And kol hakavod to you that you have to go through all of this difficulty and challenge that you go through every single day on college campuses. What should be the light, the enlightenment, the education, the open-mindedness, the liberalism. That's what you should experience. And instead, unfortunately, what we are seeing is cowardice, absolute hogwash, brainwashed into people that literally don't know what they are talking about. And the best weapon against that is one, to hold your heads up high, and two, to know what you're talking about. Because the truth is on our side. Nekuda.
Oh, thank you. I asked you enough questions for today, so I'd love to open up the floor. Yeah? We'll go with you first. Just wait until an ICC staffer comes with a microphone so we can all get in on the conversation.
Hi, Azrael from the IEC. So you touched on Turkey a little bit, Erdogan, and I just want to know, what should we make of this relationship between Israel and Turkey? You said Erdogan coming out with really strong rhetoric. I mean, he's supportive of HTS for the Kurds in Syria. But at the same time, you see trade increasing between Turkey and Israel. And you have the strategic alliance between Turkey and Azerbaijan that they will both defend each other if they go to war. Meanwhile, Israel and Azerbaijan are very cozied up. So what do we make of this kind of triangle that seems from the outside pretty volatile, but then the actual things on paper aren't matching?
Just say your name again.
Azrael.
Avram?
Azrael.
Oh, Azrael. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So, that's a very, very good question. Turkey, first of all, there's no black and white answer for anything. Everything is complicated. And everything is somewhere in between. The question is, where on the line is it? Turkey is led by a person who is a disciple of the Muslim Brotherhood. That's what he was, that's what he is, and that's what he will be. He's an ideological Islamist, a disciple of the Muslim Brotherhood. That's a given. Okay? He may be at times pragmatic when he is in real need. Okay? For example, when I was in the Knesset and the government was the Shinui government for 11 months, there was a rapprochement with Turkey because there were economic issues in Turkey, and the president of Turkey, Erdogan, wanted Israel's closeness. He still does. My opinion at the time was, we can have trade with Turkey, we can have relations with Turkey. Turkey is a very, very big country. It has a very, very big army, and it is part of NATO. So you cannot fool around with Turkey, with all respect to Israel. But Erdogan, as a disciple of the Muslim Brotherhood, he was, he is, and he will be. Watch out. That's what he is. And that means, very simply, the following. That he's that guy that I spoke about before when I was speaking about extremist Sunnis that want to create a worldwide caliphate, more or less like the Ottoman Empire, where he will be the top.
Okay.
Okay? So if you look at things from that perspective, he's at war, even though they may not look at war, they may say nice things to each other, with the Shiite other side of extremist Shiite Islamists in the Iranian regime. And that's the viewpoint from which you can start to analyze. Can we dismiss him? It's a huge country, huge military, geostrategic position, currently literally on top of Syria, having all the routes of the energy from Azerbaijan and the Turkmeni countries via Syria, potentially towards Europe, challenging Iran economically. So he gained a huge amount of strength economically in terms of energy routes, by the way, because we weakened Hezbollah. But as long as you understand that he is a disciple of the Muslim Brotherhood, you need to give the respect to him as a potential enemy. Like you need to respect the potential threat from a very wounded Iranian regime right now. Because their pride is very badly hurt. Their ego is very badly hurt. They are wounded, and they will want to retaliate and to gain back their strength and their pride. Azerbaijan is a very significant geostrategic partner to Israel. It has issues with Iran, the current regime. It has approximately 20 million Azeris, Shiites, in Iran that are badly treated in Iran and want independence, but they're Shiites. And finally, Iran supported Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh Azerbaijan-Armenian war. So if you want a black and white answer, there's none. It's a soup. Okay? But in that soup, you need to go with the right vegetable. And the vegetable that's good at the moment and important is Azerbaijan. Very important. Trying to create a kind of an understanding between Turkey and Israel because it has interest in Israel and it has interest in Turkey, and it doesn't want to be only with one of them. So Israel has to be on its tiptoes.
Okay, we have time for one more.
Benjamin Stewart, Mackie Task Force. I wanted to return to your sort of main point of the swinging pendulum between Islamic axes, although you touched on that a bit during this question. You sort of posit the Islamic world as being, or swinging in a tension between aspirational caliphates. And I'm sort of wondering, like, if you could elaborate that on a bit. Like, how do you see, now that Iran is weakened, how do you see that caliphate manifesting? You sort of seem to imply that you see it manifesting through Turkey in general. Do you see it manifesting through actual countries or something more like ISIS, an insurgent group? And besides just being on their tiptoes, I mean, what does that imply for how Israel should go about normalizing relations with all the countries it's normalizing relations with, if these countries could help to contribute to an eventual caliphate?
Thank you for that very, very good question. I just didn't catch your name.
Oh, Ben.
Ben. Oh, that's easier than Azriel. Okay.
Sorry. I love the name Azriel. It's beautiful.
So Ben, you say aspirational caliphates, but they're actually taking, they're already in implementation. Let's take Europe, for example. There are Shiite cells and Muslim Brotherhood cells, sleeping cells, all over Europe, all over Canada. In Canada, they are less dormant, they're just very awake. There's the most number of Muslim Brotherhood in the world in Canada, which is insane. In Australia, and my apologies, but in the United States of America as well. Some of them are dormant, some of them are very, very open and very overt. And they are not only in universities, they are in schools, because your schooling system is very decentralized, and a lot of the curricula is infiltrated by those carefully systematic, well-funded, and very, very patient systems that have been in place for 2 decades. So these are not only aspirational caliphates, these are caliphates in the making. The second thing that I want to address is your question about Israel. This is not a war for Israel. This is a war for anybody who has a head on their shoulders. And that means that it's a war for the UK, for France, for Belgium, for the United States of America, for Australia, for Canada, for Saudi Arabia, for the United Arab Emirates, and any country that wants to be stable. Now, there is a huge understanding, if anywhere, by those countries like Saudi Arabia, like United Arab Emirates, of the potential damage that Muslim Brotherhood and or their Shiite counterpart, extreme, can do in a country if they take over or if they gain strength. And that's why they are completely outlawed in those countries. Completely. Interestingly, Qatar is currently stepping into, very strangely, because they are the traditional enemy, into Egypt and a little bit into Jordan because of terrible economic crises. This is something that's not on the radar screen of the world or the world media and should be viewed with a lot of caution. These are significant countries and they can export a hell of a lot of problems. Now, this Shiite-Sunni divide is alive and well and kicking. Yes, the Iranian axis or the Shiite axis has been weakened. It's now wounded. By the way, it was in a very, very, very bad shape after the Iraq-Iran war. But it jumped up again. Remember, the United States cleared the way, not intentionally, but by going into Iraq and literally leaving Iraq without any kind of leadership with Saddam Hussein. So it sort of opened the path for then Ayatollah regime and Iranian regime. Now what we are doing, we weaken that access, by no means annihilated it at all, yet. But we've allowed the path, we've opened the path, knowingly or unknowingly. But it needs to be more on the radar screen of everybody for the Sunni extremist regimes like Qatar and like Turkey. Now Qatar, that teeny tiny tiny little Qatar. 300 and a little bit thousand people. You get it? I mean, how smart can you be? It's unbelievable. They are literally buying the world. That's what they're doing. They are buying up the world. They already own a third of London. They own football teams, they own buildings, they own infrastructure, they own people, they own politicians, they own campuses, they own faculty members, they own schools. They have a lot of money. And they're very smart. And they've been working quietly and smartly behind the scenes for a long time. And you know what the silver lining is with October 7th? Is that their disguise has been sort of lifted. It's there, guys. It's all there. Just watch. Look. It's not even secret anymore. They're buying up everything. Everything. What you as leaders can do is legislate against untransparent foreign funding, for example. Educate the masses as to who owns whom, and thereby showing why do they act in the manner that they act. Why is Egypt suddenly acting in a strange way that it has never acted before? Why is Jordan doing some things that it's doing? Why are certain Americans, Canadians, Australians, and Europeans acting like they are? Why are there thousands of mosques in the UK and still churches are being rounded up by Islamists in the UK and prayers are taking place on main streets? Why? You should be asking people those questions. And they won't have good answers because there are none. This has been meticulously planned for years. And if you think that this is not happening in the United States of America, you're wrong. It is. And this is something that we should all show whoever's willing to listen. And those who are not willing to listen, we should show them in a different manner. And not out of a cry against anti-Semitism or against Zionism. Because this is not a fight which is just Israel's or the Jews. This is a fight for anybody who has a head on their shoulders. So when you speak to people, it's their head you should be inviting them to be worried about, not yours. They're Catholic, Christian, non-Islamist. Some of them are Muslims, but not radical, not Islamist. Their heads that you should be telling them that they should be concerned about. And maybe they'll wake up that way. Rather than talking about Zionists and Jews, I mean, some people care, but let's face it, not everybody, right?
Ruth, thank you so much for speaking with us.